broadcasting in the 2 p.m. hour from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on your morning drive at 5 a.m. on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to the Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker, professionally gay for pay since 2014. Happy to have you here with me today. There is a lot of news happening. Coming up after us, you can catch up with the headlines either with the Matt McNeil Show in Minneapolis or with Chu's Views with Richard Chu in Chicago. For us today, it's our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode where we sit down with a guest for the majority of the episode to help us think more clearly and more queerly on the major issues of the day facing the queer and allied community. After that, I will continue my Queer and the Cosmos essay series. Today, we're going to talk about two things: the visibility of queer and trans stories with a new library opening up in Northeast United States, Boston specifically, and getting our queer houses in order, literally. So my guest is Jake Stepanski. Jake is a gathering designer, theater maker, arts educator, creative producer, writer, and sound designer. Folks, this is going to be a partial biography. Jake does amazing things. Jake creates extraordinary gatherings at Jetco with co-conspirator Eli Schleicher and freelances in New York City as the program manager for adult programs at Central Synagogue. Jake curated and realizes educational and artistic events of all kinds. Jake has previously worked with the award-winning American Rep Theater as the HGSE Education and Engagement Associate, and Jake is the co-founder and board president of the QT Library. What is the QT Library? It is a brick-and-mortar LGBTQIA+ lending library and substance-free community space coming soon to Boston, or, and I love this, quoting from their website, imagine a quietly majestic, lusciously colorful, resplendently book and plant-filled, naturally lit, immaculately vibed open space for queer and trans people of all ages, including youth, families, and elders, and all the folks they love. That is the QT Library. Jake Stepanski, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Wow, that was a wild intro. Hearing anything about yourself, let alone everything about yourself, is bananas. But thank you for having me. It is such a treat to be here.
Likewise, we got to connect in Brooklyn when Jim, my executive producer of this show, he and I also host and executive produce This Queer Book Saved My Life, and we got to meet you at a live event that we did in Brooklyn in April, which already feels like it was weeks and weeks and weeks ago, which technically it kind of was. But through that, we got to learn about the QT Library and also something that I was very much intrigued by, which is professional organizing. Do I have
yeah.
All right. I want to know more about getting our queer houses in order, literally speaking. So help me first understand, what is professional organizing?
That's a fantastic question. And I actually struggle with the term professional organizing because that's not quite what I do, I think.
Great. Fact check me.
Yeah, let's get it together, John. I actually think of myself as doing something akin to basically if you combined Marie Kondo and the Queer Eye team. And I think they do two very distinctly separate things. And if you combine them, you get something that looks like professional organizing, but there's actually a professional organizing industry that I think operates like kind of differently than how I operate. So the professional organizing industry is like, hey, your house is messy. We're gonna tell you all of the proper storage solutions to get your items into bins. We're going to help you, pick out the right shelving unit, and we're going to make decisions together about the physical space. And that's like shows like the home edit. That's all very lovely, but I actually do something slightly different. And I think it's why Marie Kondo and the Queer Eye team. I think what Marie Kondo does is she says, hey, you have some stuff and you have some space. And I think it's really important that the amount of stuff that you have and the amount of space that you have match. And also that you as a person know what you have, and you know for certain that every item in your home you have because you chose it to be there. That's like the Marie Kondo half of what I do. The Queer Eye half of what I do is that I show up to people's homes and I'm ridiculous, and I'm also silly and fun and gay, and I have a partner who is really into fashion and interior design, and he like keeps me on track and helps me like make sure I pick clothes that make me feel good about myself. And all that is to say that because I can bring that energy into people's homes, sometimes people need to be reminded very straightforwardly that like they matter, their decisions matter, they're allowed to do whatever they want to within the context of their own lives. And so bringing both the sort of like practical, I'm going to sit with you and help you go through your stuff and make sure you have the stuff that you want and need, while also saying, hey, you're really, really important. And like, when you ask me if you're allowed to keep a sweater, that's a wild thing for you to ask me because I'm just a random guy and you're allowed to like sweaters. That's actually a really wonderful thing. So that's the big picture overview of what I do. And I think the only other thing I would just add is that like I like to think I'm at a more affordable price point than a lot of other folks who are offering this kind of service. And I actually think that's really important because this is a service or like relationship or whatever you want to call it that I think everybody probably needs and is maybe a little bit afraid to ask for because like life is hard. Capitalism is, everywhere, and we all have too much stuff, or at least we have stuff that we don't even know why we have it. Okay, that was me rambling about organizing, but ask questions. I want to hear them.
Okay, so let's do some hypotheticals to further unpack this, pun intended. So let's say I'm a queer person. I'm in a 2-bedroom apartment. Life sucks because we're living in the hellscape given to us by MAGA. And I've got like a lot going on and stuff is sort of just all over the place. And I'm like, I need help understanding my life right now. I'm going to call Jake Stepanski. Jake's going to come in here. What's going to happen next?
So one of the things that I really pride myself on is being a person who's able to look at chaos and say like, hey, I think this might be the problem, or like, I think this might be the first step or the place to start. So in practice, what happens is someone calls me. We have like a very quick FaceTime call. They show me their apartment. They say like, this is stressing me out and this is stressing me out. And I don't know how to deal with this. And also like, my dog is like chewing on all the furniture. And also like, I don't know how to share with my partner and like this and that. And when you meet with me, I'll often say like, okay, I think this is the place to start. It seems, or I'll straight up ask them. I'll say like, what is the piece of this puzzle that is actually giving you the most stress or the most agita? And then how can we sort of like develop a system? How can we basically hang out with each other for 4 hours and like address the problem? I sometimes like to say that ultimately at the end of the day, like there is nothing that I offer as a service that people can't do themselves, because most of what I offer as a service is sitting there and like holding your hand while you go through your closet, sitting there and holding your hand while you go through a massive toy chest. So like it is essentially a service of like being there and being and asking questions of people and asking thoughtful and like very, very judgment free or shame free questions. So yeah, I mean, essentially in practice, people call me, they show me a mess, and I say like, where's the most sort of accessible entry point? And then we just schedule a time and get to it. And I make sure that they eat a lot, or they eat snacks and they stay hydrated.
Snacks, hydration, very good. That's not necessarily a service that you can do for yourself. But when you mentioned the Queer Eye bit of it, like where my mind goes of the theme, I guess, of a Queer Eye show is the discovery of more of your authentic self, that your space, your food, your clothing, your like how you're grooming yourself aren't reflective of who you are. So how do you incorporate, like, yeah, I can have you come over and be like, help, chaos in my closet, but you're doing something a little bit, I mean, yeah, you're helping with that, but the questions I feel like you're saying are also kind of helping me create a space that is more authentic to me.
Yeah, that's a really insightful observation. And I think like,
Well,
obviously it is different. You're welcome. Obviously it's different for each person. But I think I will name that like I have a complex background in psychology, in education with a focus on adult learning and creative learning, and also sort of in arts and self-expression through the arts and creative discovery. All of that is to say that it is not so much that I'm going in and like Karamo making a plan to go rock climbing and like at the top of the rock climbing wall you're going to like find out that you were gay the whole time. Like that's not what I'm doing. But what's really interesting is that I think in people's homes and spaces there's a lot of buildup over time, and that buildup allows you to get stuck. So what it means is that people are going through their closets and whatever other part of their home, but often their closets, and saying, wow, this was a t-shirt that I wore like in a previous version of myself. And I'm really scared to let that go, that version of myself. But actually, like, it's been 5 years since I was that person. I had a kid, I, got married, I got a dog, like whatever the thing is. And part of what I do is a lot of sitting there while people like hold their stuff and cry, not in a bad way, but just in a like that it's often I'm like with people in the moment that they realize that they're allowed to be who they are or something else or something new, and a lot of my practice is a lot about like asking questions and then sitting in silence.
Mm.
And I think it's like, I don't know, it's really interesting. One thing I'll say is like, I've done it with total strangers. I've also done it like with my partner, and I did it like with our home. We did it with our home, and I have done it with some of my closest friends. And it's like, you can't overestimate how unexpected the discoveries are going to be.
Can you leave it right there? We're going to pick that up when we come back from this break. Short break here. More with Jake Stepanski when we come back. Connect with more progressive news and radio at am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. You are listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker. It's just after 20 minutes past the hour, rather. This is our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode. My guest is Jake Stepanski, who is the co-founder of many things, including Jetco, which creates extraordinary gatherings that inform and inspire. What we're talking about right now is decluttering, organizing, and compassionate reset. The work that Jake does, which is a synthesis of like Marie Kondo and Queer Eye. And before the break, Jake, you were talking about when you're doing the work with folks, there not being like the sense of wonder of you not knowing what's going to emerge or happen when you're having these conversations. Tell me more about that.
Absolutely. So I think I have this like thing in my mind that I don't really talk to clients about, but like it's a thing that I've had for a long time in my mind, which is like how much you play the game, air quotes. There's really no barometer for what that means, but how much you play the game in my mind is like how much you follow the rules that are prescribed by society, how much you follow structures or systems or dress codes or any of the sort of spoken or unspoken rules of the world. And I like to think that I am a person who navigates playing the game in all sorts of ways. Sometimes I really play the game and sometimes I don't play the game at all. But I have become aware in my work that there are a lot of people who really play the game, and it's not for any reason, or it can be for any number of reasons. It's because they don't know that there's a game at all. It's because they have never been introduced to anything outside of the game or been given permission to break the rules, or didn't even know that there were rules in the first place. And so one of the things that I love to bring into my work as an organizer, declutterer, etc., is I often say that my love language is recommendations, or at least sort of like bringing newness or new ideas into people's lives. The book that you should totally be reading, the movie that you should be reading, the television show, the book, or whatever. And I find that a lot of my clients, especially clients who are, mired in stuff, like if you have enough stuff to really feel that this is a service that is like important and meaningful to you, there's a lot of folks who are in that position and who also really play the game. And then I come in and I'm like, I'm building a queer library, and I like worked. I mean, I've had all sorts of I've lived a lot of lives. I've worked at a dance company called Forklift Dance Works that makes dances with trash collectors and firefighters and lifeguards and other employees of the city of Austin. I worked like at a synagogue. I worked in various like creative arts capacities. I've like been all over the map and lived many, many lives. And I think just even in the like storytelling and giving people a chance to ask questions about the many lives that I've lived, that sometimes like unlocks people's ability to see new possibilities for themselves. At the very least, it unlocks some kind of curiosity, and that like is a nice segue into the QT library, because the QT library is all about what we say is the curiosity and magic of the queer and trans community. And I think that's what I try and bring into my organizing work, is like this curiosity and magic that is itself quite permissive for people who are really set on playing the game.
Mm-hmm. We are talking with Jake Stepanski, who is the co-founder and board president of the QT Library. I have questions about that coming up here. Before we leave the work that you do with decluttering, organizing, declutterizing. There you go. There's your term. Decluttering.
Honestly.
And compassionate reset. For folks who are feeling it, which is a lot of us right now in the queer community, trying to just get through the first 6 months, let alone the next 4 years of this hellscape, which is literally the only word that I can come up with here. What are your recommendations, because that's your love language, to folks who are looking at their space right now or looking at their life right now and going, bleep, what do I do?
That's a great question. Okay. A couple of things come to mind. The first is like, if you're a person who likes books, if you're a person who's like, I want to self-help, I really do recommend watching the Marie Kondo television show and reading her book, which I believe called The Life-Changing Art of Tidying Up. I also really love Margarita Magnusson's The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Those are both two books that have like really sparked a lot for me. The other thing besides that sort of tangible recommendation is to know, and I like mean this with my whole chest, is that you are not alone in this. Like, everybody is struggling with this, and if they are not, they have paid help to like help them deal with it. I can say that with some confidence, honestly, which is to say that like the number one thing that I recommend for anybody is ask a friend. Even just having someone like sit with you while you go through your closet will actually be a really liberating experience, and be like a really joyful and or complexly emotional one. Like, it's really there's an immediate intimacy, but if you trust that there will not be shame, because everyone is going through this kind of these feelings and these experiences. Again, as I said before, there's nothing that I do that like anybody can't do themselves. The thing that I bring is the physical presence and the like compassionate question asking, and the permission to be yourself. So that I say is like tap in your networks. There's there's a lot of talk on TikTok, which I used to be on, but I'm not on these days because I'm decluttering my life from social media, but that's a whole other story. there's a lot of talk on TikTok about what it means to be a part of a village, what it means to be a part of a community, and how we like can trust each other to do slightly inconvenient things for one another, like picking each other up from the airport or whatever. And I would say that this is the kind of thing that you should absolutely like tap into your village for. Have your parent, have your friend, your child, whatever, come and sit with you while you go through your closet or deal with a really scary drawer, and it will make it more fun. And it's one of those like, the thing you procrastinated for 6 months that took 10 minutes to do. Um, yeah, that's I think my biggest advice. Trust your people and lean on them.
Trust your people. That's really good advice. I have to fit in a break here. None of this would be possible, both the Gailey Show and the conversation that we are having today, without the support of our sponsors and our advertisers who help keep us and progressive news and radio on the air at a time when the administration is coming for us. So when I say shop with our advertisers and do business with them, that is literally a way that you can help fight back and keep progressive news and talk out there to help folks make better informed choices when they go into the voting booth. So tell them that you heard about them on The Gailey Show on AM 950 Radio or on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. More after the break. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on your morning drive or with your morning coffee at 5 a.m. on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker. We're just past the bottom of the hour. It is our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode, where we sit down with a guest for the majority of the episode to help us think more clearly and more queerly on the major issues of the day facing the queer and allied community. With me today is Jake Stepanski. Jake is a gathering designer, theater maker, arts educator, creative producer, writer, and sound designer. Has worked previously with the award-winning American Rep Theater, ART, as the HGSE Education and Engagement Associate, is the co-founder, co-conspirator of JetCo, and the co-founder and board president of the QT Library, which is what we're going to get into in a few minutes. But I have a final question, Jake, about the work that you do around decluttering, organizing, and compassionate reset. I worked in health education. I was looking at through my closet and my drawers in anticipation of this interview going, well, what would I have Jake work on with me? And the thing that I noticed was that the things that I have are fairly recent in my life. I have very, very few things. Like, I think the oldest thing I have is a pair of shoes that I have tense emotional attachment to that are from like 2003. That's like the oldest thing that I own. I guess my question then is how do I set up my space to be a space where I can feel like I can keep things from this era of my life, as opposed to what I do is just sort of chuck things overboard. And then I don't have anything to look back on and go, oh yeah, I remember this t-shirt from, 2007 where I was this person and doing these things.
Absolutely. Okay, I have three thoughts. The first is just to name that I do not believe in, and this service is not, mandated minimalism. I think minimalism is a thing. I don't think there's a moral valence to minimalism. So like at the end of the day, I'm not here to force you to throw anything away, and I'm not here to force you to keep anything, because ultimately you are a good person whether or not you keep the pair of shoes that you really love. That's the first sort of framing thought. The second thing that I'll say is that one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got from Marie Kondo by reading the book is to remember that every item that comes into your life for a purpose. And that purpose can be the joy that you got while buying it, the joy that you got receiving something as a gift. And if it has fulfilled its purpose, you can do the Marie Kondo thing and say like, thank you. I really appreciated you being in my life. I'm going to like let you go on to a new home. So all of it is to say that like, remember that you do not have to beat yourself up about something coming into or leaving your home, because as long as it has fulfilled its purpose, then uh, it's good to go. And the final thing that is like a more direct response to your question is, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was make sure that everything in your home functions as a feature and not a bug. So what I mean by that is that if you have an item in your home and you're like, this is a shirt that I will never wear ever, but I love it. It means a lot to me. Then I say, okay, amazing. If it is in your drawers, it is going to feel like a bug. It is going to feel like something that is wrong because you can't like use it in the way that it was intended. But if you mount it on a wall, put it in a box of sentimental items, care for it or display it in some way that allows you to honor the item instead of um, feeling bad about the fact that you don't wear it, then it becomes a feature instead of a bug. This was introduced to me because I kept my old CD player from when I was a kid, and I was like, I'm never going to listen to it. And my friend was like, listen to it, use it every day, and then it becomes a feature instead of a bug. And I think that is like my last piece of advice, is that remember that the context in which you keep something can change and actually informs like whether or not you feel good about having it in your home.
I love that. I just found my collection of CDs from 2007, and I'm like, I don't have a CD player. And I
Mine
don't even know
just
where to get one.
Well, after 2 years of this, my CD player literally died in front of me like 3 days ago. So I need to decide if I want to buy a new one, which I might, because I have a lot of CDs.
And it was like I had a good collection. But also at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, there's Pandora and Spotify. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Thank you. I knew I wanted to talk to you about this, Jake, and this is everything that I was hoping this conversation was going to be. So thank you for that, because I think it's really important for queer people who are looking at the state of the world and looking at the interior of their world, their apartments or their condos or their townhomes or their rooms, if they're renting a room or with their parents or their houses, that they making sure that that space is reflective of them, and the things that are in there, I love that, are features and not bugs, as part of how we're going to get through this collectively and individually over the next 4 years. I also, speaking of getting through the next 4 years, that clearly there's been a lot of attacks on LGBTQ books. And there's a huge case right now in front of the Supreme Court, Mahmoud versus Taylor, that's going to make it really difficult to have LGBTQ books and teaching in the classroom once they rule against us, which it looks like they're going to in the oral arguments. We cover book bans a lot here on this show, and you are the co-founder of the QT Library, which is something that we absolutely want to lift up and support going forward as the Gailey Show. So tell us about the QT Library.
Absolutely. It is my joy. I'm beaming just the chance to talk about it. So the QT Library is at present, all volunteer collective of somewhere around 150 to 200 queer and trans artists, educators, librarians, of course, uh, community activists and leaders, fundraisers, people of all kinds from all backgrounds who are working to build a brick and mortar queer and trans library and substance-free community gathering space in Boston. We've been at it for, oh God, about 3 years now. That's wild. And I had the idea to do this 3 years ago. I was feeling like I really needed a change in my life, and I really wanted to sort of give back to the community that had done so much to care for and raise me, which was the queer and trans community, my community. And at the time, the show Heartstopper had just come out. I'm sure you are familiar, but for those who aren't, it is a television show on Netflix. Put quite simply, it is extremely delightful. And that for me, in addition to being clearly made by queer and trans folks for queer and trans folks, and having that sort of delightful touch, but it was just this like incredibly moving and simple show for youth. When I was a kid, I remember having very, very, very limited access to queer stories and queer media, and pretty much all of the queer stories in media that I consumed ended with somebody basically getting hit by a bus or like dying of AIDS or
Mhm.
some sort of tragedy as a like necessary component of that queer storytelling. So Heartstopper for me was incredibly moving, and I found myself um, literally going to all of my friends and saying like, you have to sit with me and watch the first episode of Heartstopper, and like we're going to cry together, and then you're going to be obsessed, and then I'm going to be obsessed for you. And I would do this over and over and over and over again. And I had this moment where I was like, you know, if I could just introduce people to Heartstopper or whatever Heartstopper or whatever show is like Heartstopper for them, for the rest of my life, like that would be the happiest thing in the world for me. And then because I am ridiculous and because I care a lot about public space and public gathering space and community creation through like space, I was like, what job would I have to have where I could do that every day? Obviously, I would have to be the gay librarian at the gay library. I don't have a library background. I'm not a librarian. I am just a person who loves libraries and remembers finding, you know, David Levithan's books as a kid on the shelf and in 2005 or whatever, and being obsessed to finally see myself. Anyway,
Mhm.
all this is to say that I reached out to a handful of friends, and the three of us, the four of us, me and three other people, schemed and dreamed for about 9 months and then put the idea out into the world 2 years ago. And since then, it has sort of blossomed into this massive endeavor. So today, we are about 150 folks strong. We have nonprofit status, a collection of, I believe, they will get mad at me if I say it wrong, but I think it's like 2,800 books, physical books that we have gathered. They're in our office space, which is in Massachusetts, in Arlington. We have a whole team of librarians and also like just book lovers who have been trained in the arts of book processing and librarianship. Basically descend every weekend and prepare the catalog or prepare the collection for circulation. We do programming, we do community engagement and tabling. We do all the things. And yeah, that's where we're at right now.
We are talking with Jake Stepansky, who is the co-founder and board president of the QT Library. And I mean, for the library, not only could you have the recommendation of the Netflix series, but there's also all of the graphic novels that Alice Osman has that I would have. But when I find YA Lit, part of me goes, what would young John have done? Would he have looked for it, or would he have been too nervous to even go and look for it? But didn't even have the option when I was growing up in the 90s and late 80s to even have a Heartstopper. So I am thrilled for kids these days that they even get to have those stocked in their library shelves. School or public, probably less so school right now, given depends on which state you live in, whether or not it will be there. But what is the so you're a 501c3 right now. What are the plans then for the, like, do you have a timeline of when the doors will open?
It's a great question. So transparently, like when we started, which was 3 years ago, we were like, okay, building an entire library, like collection and team and having a budget of $1 million, that can't take more than 2 years, right? Like that's fine. We'll be like in a space in no time. And we had a June 2024 launch plan, and we had backed into it with a whole comprehensive timeline and plan. And all of that to say that didn't happen. But that didn't happen because life happened. And one of the things that was really important to us alongside building a library was what we always said was that we are building a community around the creation of the QT library. And that is like first and foremost. And what that means is that we are a collective that strives to make this work as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. It means that we are trying to lay like strong foundations structurally. We are trying to be an organization where people, let's put it this way. I used to describe the QT library for a long time when I did our welcome sessions as a blob. I meant that with all the love in the world, but like any good blob, it would change and it would grow. We would have some people who would be volunteering for 20 hours a week. And we had some people who would be in our Discord server and they would just be sort of watching from the sidelines, and they would pop their comments in every once in a while. We really wanted to create a working structure that would allow folks to be in and out and go deal with life things and like bring their full selves to this work. So all of that is to say that what I often say is that we are working to get to the point where if tomorrow someone handed us the keys to a space and said, actually, we have this free space that you can have. If someone handed us the keys tomorrow, then we could move in and set up a library in a fairly short amount of time. That's like what we are working towards. It means that we are building a collection that is circulation ready. We've built our own catalog. It means that not only are we doing programming, but we are building infrastructure so that we have bandwidth to do programming. It's about like laying groundwork while we also search for our next step.
Congratulations on that. It's such an amazing project. We will continue to stay in touch about that as you get towards that day when you have that brick and mortar library. Thank you, Jake, for joining us on The Gailey Show.
Of course. It was such a real treat. I appreciate your time.
To support and connect with the QT Library, please visit qtlibrary.org. To connect with Jake, you can go to Jetco, head to jet-co.org. We can sign up for their weekly, I don't know if it's a weekly newsletter, but the newsletter is the check-in. Coming up next, well, we have a break. More to come on The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I close out our weekly Thinking Queerly episodes with a weekly essay series called Queer in the Cosmos, an opportunity to examine queer life through exploration of the cosmos. Here is my latest essay, Light Year 15, Northern Lights. In my youth, aka my 20s, I used to think that the Northern Lights only lit up the skies when it was really cold outside. Apparently, I wasn't paying attention that day in any of my science classes for my entire life that explained that notion was a myth. I have only actually seen the Northern Lights once in my life in Leelanau County, Michigan, at my dad's house. I was up late watching TV, and I just happened to look out my window because I saw some weird light off in the distance. Turning off the TV revealed the dancing, mystic Northern Lights. They were shades of blue and purple, not the green and pinks you see in the epic videos or photos online, but these purpley blues flowed like blowing curtains across the sky, shimmering and fading and sparkling, just these constant waves of light. I was lucky that it was a new moon. I sat there for the better part of an hour, dazzled by these lights I had heard about my entire life but never seen, and wouldn't have seen if I had been responsible and gone to bed on time. And I even worked at a TV station, so I should have been alert to the fact that the Northern Lights were possible that particular night. I didn't go outside to observe them. It was pretty cold out, reinforcing my belief in the myth about cold and Northern Lights. I sat warmly on the couch, face pressed to the glass, literally. In retrospect, I wish I had gone outside. I'm sure the screens on the window were muting the colors and the magic. I was lucky, though, that my house was up on a hill, so I could see the curtain of lights fold in on themselves far into the horizon. And I was that much closer up to the sky as I literally craned my neck against the window to look directly upwards at them. Perhaps I thought that if I was seeing them then and there at last, then I would see them again, and I wouldn't need to make the effort on that particular night to get my boots on and my coat and my hat and my gloves and find the fortitude to stand in the frigid cold of a Michigan winter. If I was seeing them that night, then they would shimmer again on a different night, one less cold than that one. And it was a particularly queer experience, or at least it was how I was enjoying all queer things at that time in my life, privately in the dark. I didn't wake up my dad or brother. I sat by myself in my nightly silence, marveling at a world that was so much more interesting and full of life than I had been raised to believe. Much like I did at night in my own room with the door closed and the only light is of the computer screen, typing and scrolling through all sorts of queer life that only existed for me in pixels on a screen. So far away from Leelanau County, none of it was nearby in Traverse City or Cadillac or Petoskey or Sheboygan, Leland or Sutton's Bay. To all those people who were living openly queer lives, I was just this far-off pixel in the Midwestern darkness, like those furthest stars who barely twinkle in the night sky. I was lucky to see the northern lights that night. And I suppose I was selfish, thinking I should just keep them to myself. When I see them again, I thought, I'll tell the family. But I haven't seen them since. It's been 20 years. So this past weekend, when the alerts popped up that the northern lights were imminent, I was excited. At this point, okay, I now know that it is our star that creates the storms that are the northern lights. Like so many things that I had to relearn when I got out of the quote-unquote God's country, I read that there were the aurora borealis in the northern hemisphere and the aurora australis in the southern hemisphere. I learned the term aurora borealis came from Galileo, and I read that there are two causes of the aurora: a coronal mass ejection from the sun star, and to a lesser extent, coronal holes. Now, a coronal mass ejection is when a solar flare ejects billions of tons of plasma from the star and blasts it through space at millions of miles per hour. When this mass ejection makes it to Earth, it creates large geomagnetic storms. And on May 30th, 2025, a solar flare erupted and gusts of plasma shot at us at 4.3 million miles per hour. This set off a severe G4 geomagnetic storm. The scale for measuring these storms is G1 to G5, 5 being the worst. Apparently, the aurora were stunning. I, however, did not get to see them. Despite being at our place in northwest Wisconsin, which has zero light pollution, see my last week's essay, and where I have waited for 14 years to see the aurora borealis. I did not get to see them because Canadian wildfires covered my skies with layers of smoke, blocking my view. About 17,000 people have evacuated their homes, escaping from 188 wildfires burning across Canada's Manitoba, Alberta, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan provinces. Wildfire services, military aircraft, search and rescue teams, and international aid are fighting these fires, many of which are still uncontrolled. In my neck of the woods, air quality levels plummeted as you could look directly at the sun star, which was a melting shade of red in the smoke. But I wasn't free from the influence of our star. While I would have preferred seeing the geomagnetic storm, our star was baking the fire smoke, transforming it. When smoke spends its time hovering in the atmosphere, a recent study suggests that it bakes. And in the first of its kind study that was published in Atmospheric Environment, researchers found in the aged smoke, oxygenated compounds led to higher levels of cell death in the lungs. This on top of the risk of climate change, which has intensified droughts, making wildfires much more likely and larger. As more and more low-level areas spend more and more time exposed to the star's heat and light, the vegetation in those areas dries out faster, creating a buffet for wildfires to gorge on. This is obviously far worse than blocking my view of the aurora borealis. The combination of climate change and wildfires has radically changed queer life on this planet. But even so, our connection to our star is impossible to break. For better or for worse, it's constantly transforming us, whether its radiation is creating vitamin D in our skin, or baking wildfire smoke, chemically altering its toxicity, or spewing its plasma at us, at our magnetic sphere. The quality of our lives, queer or otherwise, will always be tied to a star. Up next is the Matt McNeil Show, folks, or Choose Views with Richard Chu in Chicago. Until tomorrow, keep it queer, America.